All right, Chris, it's official. The Vancouver Canucks have officially concluded their season. David Quadrelli alongside Chris Faber here at Rogers Arena reporting for Canucks Army. Bruce Boudreau just finished his end-of-season media availability, asked about his future with the Canucks, and he said that he wants to be the coach of the Canucks. He doesn't sound like he wants to take a step back and look at other coaching options. It looks like Bruce Boudreau wants to be the coach of this team moving forward.
Yeah, a lot of positives to take away here from the end of season availability with Bruce Boudreau. I thought he was pretty positive about wanting to come back next year. The double option situation was kind of discussed between the team and Bruce Boudreau's side of the camp. Seemed pretty positive about being here next year with the Vancouver Canucks and getting a chance to start fresh from training camp, not halfway through a season, but to come in at the start of training camp and have the positivity that they've built up, the momentum that we've seen throughout the season, be something that they can build off into next year. A very positive finish of the year for the Vancouver Canucks here with Bruce Boudreau's media availability.
And one thing I found interesting was that Bruce Boudreau talked about the finish to the season. He said, usually when you're on the outside of the playoffs, you don't feel very good about yourselves. But in the case of the Canucks, they do feel good about themselves heading into the offseason.
Yeah, and they should. They had a lot of really positive takeaways from the second half of the season ever since Boudreau took over. And to see that kind of be wrapped up in the availability from the players and from the coach, a lot of positive things to look forward to in training camp. And you think that it isn't really a fresh start when they come into training camp next year. It's really just kind of building off of what they already did this season. And that should be a positive for Canucks fans because what they did in the second half of the season was remarkable. It was a great turnaround for the Vancouver Canucks, and if they can build off of that instead of having to start fresh, there's some momentum to build off of in that situation.
So the question on everybody's mind, Chris, where do the Canucks go from here? Off-season starts right away.
Where does the belt go from here? Because that's what you asked about, and we don't really know an answer yet on that.
Bruce Boudreau even said that they might not use a belt next year. It might be something else. He said there were 3 items that they used in Minnesota, so we'll have to wait and see on the belt, but in terms of the Canucks and their on-ice roster and the decisions that they have to make this offseason, where do the Canucks go from here?
Yeah, as much as Boudreau joked about having Connor McDavid be a player that they could target, they are going to look for some depth, add some depth to this team. A little bit of defense probably needs to be shaken around a little bit. You'd like to potentially see a different partner for Quinn Hughes down the road, and then see if Luke Schenn can stay on the roster but be used in a different situation. Bruce also talked about the OEL and Tyler Myers pairing being something that he liked seeing them be able to adjust to being a shutdown pairing, and that is all because of what the Quinn Hughes pairing does for this team.
Now, there's an interesting little thing I've looked at for next season, and when we talk about Luke Schenn coming back, we kind of look at him coming in a similar role to what he did in Quinn Hughes' first year in the league, and we look at a guy in Jack Rathbone, who's now taking part in the AHL playoffs with the Abbotsford Canucks. Coming in next year, Jack Rathbone's going to want a job, and it looks like Travis Dermott might be in his way. Who do you see winning out that job, and do you see Luke Schenn kind of adopting that role where he's playing with a Rathbone or a Dermott?
Yeah, I think Dermott's versatility to play both sides is going to be really interesting at training camp. I don't think we'll only see him as a left-sided defenseman at Canucks training camp in the fall, but it does sort of make a block there for Jack Rathbone once again. I don't know if there's going to be a trade that's going to be moved around with Jack Rathbone, but it seems like that could be something potentially in the offseason, as it feels like they've had enough options that can fill out a third pairing, where Jack's a very talented player. He does great in the AHL, and it just feels like there's not really a smooth path for him to get to the NHL, when a player in his position kind of should have a smooth path to be able to get into the NHL from what they've shown at such a young age in the AHL, and in my personal belief, in the NHL as well. I think Jack Rathbone has looked like an NHL defenseman when he's put in that role. I'd like to see a third pairing of Schenn and Rathbone next year for the Canucks. I just don't know if that's the easiest route that we're going to get to next year.
JT Miller, Brock Boeser, Connor Garland. Those are the 3 names being thrown around right now, and it's expected that one of those isn't going to be here come training camp after the offseason. Chris, if you have to pick one of those names to be shipped out, who are you picking?
I think just from one swift move of clearing up cap space, adding value, and getting younger, it seems like it's going to be JT Miller. I mean, there's going to be a lot of players, picks, prospects, whatever it is coming in return for JT Miller. I think with the contract situation that he's in, with the Canucks wanting to clear up cap space, it makes the most sense for it to be him.
And JT Miller is obviously going to need an extension after next season. Brock Boeser is a guy who we're expecting is going to get extended this offseason, hopefully longer term. A lot of people don't think it's going to be a qualifying offer. With Brock Boeser, what do you think the sweet spot is for him to return to the Canucks?
Oh, it's going to be interesting. I think it really depends on the years. I think you're looking at something in the 2 to 3 year range, and then for money, I think it's somewhere in the 6. I think that's where you're going to have to work out. I don't think the QO makes too much of a difference on what the eventual contract number is going to be.
Absolutely. David Quadrelli, Chris Faber here for Canucks Army.